again, Jim. Nice to see everyone. For the record, my name is Tanya Fernandes Anderson, the District 7 City Councilor. I am the chair of Boston City Council Committee on Ways and Means. This hearing is being recorded. It is being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity 8 RCN Channel 82 and Files Channel 964. The Council's budget review process will encompass a series of public hearings beginning in June and beginning in April, running through June. We strongly encourage residents to take a moment to engage in this process by giving testimony for the record. You can do this in several ways. Attend one of the hearings and give public testimony. We will take public testimony at each departmental hearing and also at the 2 hearings dedicated for public testimony. The full hearing schedule is on our website at boston.gov/council-budget. Our scheduled hearings dedicated to public testimony are tomorrow, April 26th at 6 p.m. and June 2nd at 6 p.m. as well. You can give testimony in person here in the chamber or virtual via Zoom. For in-person testimony, please come to the chamber and sign up on the sheet near the entrance. For virtual testimony, you can sign up using your online form on our Council Budget Review website or by emailing the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. When you are called to testify, please state your name, affiliation, or residence, and limit your comments to just 2 to 3 minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. You can also email a written testimony to the committee at ccc.wm@boston.gov. Submit a 2-minute video of your testimony through the form on our website. For more information on the City Council budget process and how to testify, please visit the City Council's budget website at boston.gov/council-budget. Today's hearing is on dockets 04A4 to 04A2, orders for the FY23 operating budget, including annual operations for departmental operations for the school department and for other post-employment benefits. All right. Docket number 04A3, orders for capital fund transfer appropriations. Dockets 04A4 to 04A6, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. Our focus area for this budget hearing will be capital budget overview, public facility department. Our panelists for today's hearing are Jim Williamson, Director of Office of Budget Management, OBM, Jack Hanlon, is that correct? Okay, thank you. Deputy Director of Capital of OBM, Carrie Griffin, Carrie Griffin, Director of PFD, and Ellen McDonald, Assistant Director for Administration and Finance, PFD. I am joined today by my colleagues, and Councilor President Ed Flynn, Councilor Kenzie Bach, Councilor Liz Braden, Councilor Luzi Louijen, Councilor Aaron Murphy. Thank you for being here today. Would like to just give you a brief of what the agenda looks like. You will each have 5 minutes to present your presentation for today, hopefully a total of 20 minutes. Then we'll go to first rounds for council questions, each having 5 minutes. Then we'll go to public testimony. They will be given 2 minutes or a limit of 3. Then a second round, and in the same order. and then final comments from the council. If we'll hear from the public testimony of people that are present in person, and then to virtual if anyone signs up. Now I like to, I like to keep things, really simple, so I'm not gonna give any like formal introduction or any types of opening statement. But I think that, when we think about capital, as I've said earlier, for those of you who aren't here, it's really about looking at what makes sense in terms of equity. And I think that there's much opportunity here for us to discuss what that looks like. And I think that we are extending the grace in the beginning of this process to shape that as we go collectively. And I think there's plenty of opportunity here for us to work together. At some point, there will be hard questions and there will be hard statements. And I think that it's not a personal statement of people's character or integrity, rather that everyone here has a job. And if we're addressing issues that we feel need improvement, that we are collectively looking at it and in agreement that it should be more equitable. So I think a lot of these, especially on capital, a lot of these questions are going to be pretty tough. So I just wanted to preface this conversation with that tone of grace and courtesy. And I asked that my council colleagues as well respect the timing. You'll probably hear the timer go off, and I guess that would be the cue to stop. Without further ado, you have the floor for your presentation.
Thank you, Councilor. Good afternoon, Councilors. My name is Jim Williamson. I'm the Director of the Office of Budget Management, or OBM. I'm joined by my colleague, Jack Halen, the Deputy Director for Capital at OBM, and will be followed by our colleagues at Public Facilities Department to talk about the capital projects in implementation. We are happy to be here today, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss the city's 5-year capital plan. The capital plan covers the years FY23 through FY27. It totals $3.6 billion and is growing by $358 million on a net basis from last year's capital plan. So often the first question that is asked about the capital plan is what types of things make it into the capital plan? And since the city is financially responsible for the debt issued on the capital plan in large part, the projects in the programs need to be first and foremost a city-owned asset. It needs to serve an ongoing public purpose, whether it be education, public ways, public safety, open space, or recreation. And the item or improvements need to have a useful life of at least 5 years, but often 20 or 30 years. While capital projects are usually located in specific neighborhoods, the beneficiaries of these assets are often citywide. So whether it's improvements right here at City Hall Plaza downtown, or the Boston Arts Academy in the Fenway, the Boston Arts Academy is a perfect example of how there's a citywide benefit. It may be physically located in Fenway, actually abutting Fenway Park, but it serves 500 students from across the city. 90% of the students are of color, and more than half are economically disadvantaged, a true citywide or societal benefit. The slides aren't on actually, so sorry about that. Do we have to turn on something?
I asked him already.
Okay. If you want to keep going, you might have hard copies, but but the viewing audience, you might want to wait. It's coming.
It's not on there. There's nothing up there. Excuse me a moment. Is it cold in here, or is it just me? It's cold, isn't it? Yeah, it's been cold. It's always cold here. Can we That's it? We can't do anything about it? I'm black. It's cold. We gotta turn this down, whatever, do we have the AC on, is that, can we find out? No, it's just, that's it, that Kenzie? What can we do about this? Oh, nice. Fine.
Right? Okay, oh, great, it's on the screen now. So, generally, the capital plan is summarized as follows. The city maintains a large inventory of capital assets, hundreds of miles of road, dozens of bridges, parks in every neighborhood, and over 300 municipal buildings, including schools, libraries, and city hall. The city uses a combination of general obligation bonds, federal grants, typically for transportation projects, state grants, like the MSBA program for schools. And the city's 5-year capital plan is broken into 2 different project types. There are projects, whether they have like a citywide impact or more regional impact, but they have projects like schools, libraries, parks, open space, bridges. And then there's programs like tree planting and protected bike lanes and road resurfacing and sidewalk replacement and fire equipment, city technology that sort of are programmatic in nature. So later in the presentation, you'll hear from the Public Facilities Department, the largest implementer of the capital plan. You'll be meeting with the second largest implementer of the Streets Cabinet on May 9th, and the third largest implementer of the capital plan when you meet with the Open Space Cabinet on the hearing on the 26th. With that, I will turn it over to Jack Hanlon to walk us through the sources of revenue that support the plan, where the funding is spent, and who is managing the work in the city.
Thanks, Jim. Good afternoon, councilors. My name is Jack Hanlon. I'm Deputy Director of Capital Planning and OBM. On the next few slides, we're going to look at a summary of the 23 plan. And first up is a look at how we fund the program. 78% of the plan is funded directly by the city. Of this total, $2.6 billion comes from authorizations that permit the city to issue bonds that are then repaid as debt service through the city's operating budget. Just under 6% of the plan is funded by appropriations from the city's parking meter and surplus property funds. 20% of the plan is funded by state and federal grants, and a remaining 2% is a mix of private grants. Next slide, please. So so next we'll talk a little bit about how the money is used. So on this slide, as I mentioned, the plan is $3.6 billion. So investments in streets account for about 1/3 of the capital plan. School investments stand around 21%. Open space and environment represent about 13.5% of proposed spending. Smaller amounts in public safety, libraries, housing, human services, and the like account for the remaining 1/3. As Jim said, the capital plan invests in a wide range of projects, from replacing roofs and boilers at schools to constructing new libraries and implementing new mobility strategies. The capital plan is a dynamic document. Projects enter the plan and they age out when they are completed. We've shared with you information about where the projects are by neighborhood and city council district. Projects are distributed throughout the city. Sometimes they appear uneven in their distribution. For instance, the construction of a new school will substantially increase investment in a particular neighborhood for a period of time. The perceived investment level appears to go in the other direction when a large project exits the plan. In the reports that we shared with you, there were also sections that list projects that span multiple neighborhoods and council districts, and also programs that have a citywide impact. I encourage you to review those sections as well and to discover additional projects that may impact particular neighborhoods of concern. The dynamic of the capital plan arises in part also from the fact that we generally don't reflect the full cost of projects when initially introduced into the plan. We step into them in phases, from study, then into design, and then finally into construction funding. Small programming studies often lead to follow-on investments in design and construction with correspondingly larger budgets. Next slide, please. This slide here shows project budgets allocated by the departments responsible for managing them. PFD manages projects equal to 41% of the total plan, and we'll be hearing from Carrie in a few moments about those projects. The Streets Cabinet manages projects totaling 1/3 of the plan, and Parks Department managed projects come in at nearly 10%. Over the next several weeks, these departments will be coming in to testify about their budgets and speak in greater detail about the projects. Next slide, please.
Yeah, you should have gotten an email. Do you want a copy now?
This slide here shows project budgets. Let me see. Oh, I'm sorry. So with this last slide, I just want to highlight proposed staffing investments that will help move projects through the capital pipeline as quickly and as efficiently as possible. To that end, the FY23 operating budget proposes 10 new positions in PFD, as well as additional positions in the Streets Cabinet and in the Parks Department that will support implementation of capital projects and also the maintenance of recent and ongoing capital improvements. So I'm going to stop here and turn it over to Carrie.
Thank you, Jim and Jack. Good afternoon, councillors, and thank you for your advocacy and for your constituents and neighborhoods as we developed the FY23 budget. Thank you to Mayor Wu and her team for their support and commitment to the budget process to ensure a robust, diverse, and resilient budget. Thank you to the residents of Boston for your engagement in the budget process. A special thanks to the CFO's office and Office of Budget Management. PFD works throughout the year with our financial partners to ensure both fiscal responsibility and sustainability. The city's triple bond rating is a testament to their work and diligence. Finally, thank you to the PFD team, led by Chief of Operations Dion Irish. Both Chief Irish and I started together in our new roles at the height of the pandemic. It has been a whirlwind of a year, mitigating supply chain, material, and labor issues on all of our construction projects. Our team of professionals works tirelessly now and throughout the pandemic to keep our projects moving forward, delivering excellent buildings to our client end user and the residents of the city. Next slide, please. Who we are. So as Jack mentioned, PFD manages 41% of the capital plan, which includes all building construction and renovations. Our portfolio ranges from a single boiler project to an out-of-the-ground 6-story school building. We oversee the design and construction of all city buildings and maintain the highest standards of transparency and accountability. Next slide, please. We have a current caseload of 100 projects valued at almost $1.5 billion. We are governed by Mass General Law, Chapter 149 and 149A for construction and Chapter 7C for design contracts. Next slide, please. This next slide shows the project life cycle of a 149 and 149A construction project. Both delivery methods require strict adherence to the public procurement laws regulating our work. All of our projects start with a study to understand our clients' needs, as well as establishing an estimate. Throughout the conceptual, study, and design phase of a project, we engage in a vigorous community process. Next slide, please. PFD supports the city's goals of increasing diversity among city contracts. We have been working with the CFO's office and the supply diversity team to establish a pilot program for the 26 Court Street renovation project. This is a collaborative effort to work with our construction manager to provide access and opportunities to MWBEs. PFD is in partnership with the Environmental and Office of Budget Management and executes the Renew Boston Trust program, which implements alternately financed energy-efficient measures. We are about to start phase 3 of this program, which will focus on schools and city hall lighting. The previous phases 1 and 2 have yielded significant savings. For phase 1, the actual savings, there was a total cost of $11 million, actual savings $672,000 annually. Phase 2 was $19 million cost, and savings, projected savings are $430,000. Phase 3, we have a projected energy savings of $713,000.
We have just entered our third year of using eBuilder, our online project management software. eBuilder has transformed the way that we do business. Over the last 2 years, we have gone from a paper-based approval and management system to an entirely electronic one. This year, we were excited to roll out our Public Facilities Commission approvals, advertisement templates, pre-qualifications, project closeout, additional services approvals, furniture, fixture, and equipment, and other processes. This coming year, we're looking forward to continuing to create new processes, enhance existing ones, and in particular, to take on the management of the eBuilder contract for the city.
Thank you, Ellen. With our partners at BPS, PFD has managed the Massachusetts School Building Authority's grant program for the City of Boston. This is a non-entitlement competitive program for school building, construction, and renovation projects. The core program covers extensive repairs, renovations, additions, and new school construction. The accelerated repair program covers smaller repairs for structurally sound facilities such as roofs, windows, doors, and boilers. Since 2014, this grant program has reimbursed the city $206 million. Next slide, please. I'm extremely proud of the projects that we have completed this year and their impact on the user and the community, starting with our first firehouse built in 30 years, Engine 42. This is the state-of-the-art firehouse with a focus on the health and wellness of our firefighters. The Engagement Center opened in January 2022 to assist the Public Health Commission, offering our most vulnerable population services and resources. The East Boston Police Station will be opening in June. The city, in addition to these, the city has made a significant investment in library projects, including recently opened Dorchester and Rosendale branches, along with multiple library studies for Fields Corner, Eggleston Square, Uplands Corner, Codman Square, the West End, and Chinatown. Next slide. We have a wide range of ongoing projects from City Hall Plaza, the new Carter School, the Mattahan Community Center, and the East Boston Senior Center. We are looking forward to seeing these projects to completion over the next few months and years, and we are excited to see the impact that these projects will have in the communities that they serve. Next slide, please. The capital plan includes 38 new projects. We are looking forward to coordinating and collaborating with our city partners to begin this transformative work. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I was enjoying your voice and expected more. All right, we'll turn to my colleagues for questions, and I'll leave mine for last. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to say thank you to you, Council Fernandez-Anderson, for working closely with the administration team so well. So I want to acknowledge your hard work and professionalism. Also thank the administration team for their positive working relationship with the council as well. I want to say thank you to Kerry, Ellen, Jack, and Jim for your work. So one thing that let me say for the public facilities team, I had the opportunity to visit and tour the new Firehouse on Columbus Avenue. It's basically on the border of like Roxbury and Jamaica Plain area. And it's probably one of the nicest and healthiest firehouses probably in the country, the way they designed it and built it. So I just want to acknowledge the great work public facilities did working with the mayor's office, but also with the fire department and with other city departments. So do you, when you have a project like that, whether it's a new firehouse or it's a new police station, how do you take into effect, you know, the job that these city workers do, whether whether it's police or fire, but the impact it has on the environment, the impact it has on their health, their public health. And are you working now to design buildings to make them more healthier for city employees, for the public to go into?
Thank you, Councilor, for that question. So yes, prior to starting the construction on that project, and Engine 17 is actually in procurement right now, which will have the same methodology in terms of how we build it, but yes, that is probably our number one concern. When we started, prior to starting the construction of that, or even the design of that, we went through a year-long study where we met weekly with the fire department, senior leadership, and we partnered with area hospitals to understand the risks and of the cancer rates. So the focus of that entire study really was the health and wellness and the safety of our firefighters, and it's the zoning of that. The air systems are compartmentalized, so they treat, it's almost like a hospital type of, or a pharmaceutical type of air ventilation system to separate the zoning and to protect the firefighters for clean air.
No, thank you, Kerry, and I appreciate that. And I know similar when you're designing a new school, you're also factoring in the products and the construction and design and the impact it has on the health of the students and the teachers as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge and say thank you to our city workers that are focused on that, because that's a critical part of construction, design, but making sure residents work and live in a healthy environment. So I want to say thank you to your team. Madam Chair, I don't have anything further. I just wanted to thank the dedicated and professional city employees that are here.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Councilor Bach.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the team. I'm going to be a relentlessly district councilor here. First question, I was thrilled to see the significant staffing inputs for project management, because my experience just being here 2.5 years is that I used to think that the trick was getting something listed in the capital budget, and now I understand that it's actually getting it executed on. And so, for example, a small project, but one that is that's dear to us and at this point kind of stressful is, there's a little tool shed in the Boston Public Garden. Folks have seen it. It's painted green. It's the one maintenance facility in the park. And it's been in discussion for a long, long time. It was a big deal. Everyone was very excited when finally getting fixes to it into design went into the capital budget last year, because it's literally falling apart. And we've got their rats and it's decomposing, and it's also a place that people sometimes seek shelter, and we've had several unsafe situations with that. And so, I was excited last year that it was in the capital budget, but then nothing happened on it, and we've just rolled forward the 100, 200 schedule that's in the capital budget. So I guess I'm curious about that specifically, and what the prospects are for actually getting a project manager assigned and that executed on. And then in general, I would just say, with these 10 positions, obviously they're only good if we fill them, and it's a really competitive labor market right now. So can you guys talk about sort of what steps you're taking proactively, what you've done with OMB to actually make sure that these are like competitive project management positions? How are we going to try to get those people in before more than half the year is spent? Just if you can talk to me about the project manager challenges and plans in general, and then I have this very specific question as well.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Council, for your question. So it is, we do have a capacity issue in the department, but CFO OBM recognized that, and we were talking throughout the year about that. In terms of, we are finding it difficult to hire for some senior level positions and project managers. There's three rankings for project managers: Project Manager 1, Project Manager 2, and a Senior Project Manager. And the complexity of those project positions is a range, and the quantity of work. So, but we are we're hoping, and we've been given authority to already post those positions. They're union positions. And we've been authorized to post those now so that we can hit the ground running July 1 with some of the new work. I don't know if that answers your question
And do
fully.
you feel like we're listing the right levels there? Because I guess.
Yeah, we've worked with OHR to do, we recently did a job fair. We're working with them to post them better, coverage on social media. We're posting them in colleges. We are posting them on trade magazines. So we're working very closely with HR to get these more highlighted.
But I guess my question would be, you know, in a competitive labor market, there might be an argument for nix the project manager 1, advertise more project managers 2, advertise 2 senior project managers, just because of, obviously, we've got grades or setting the income, the salary. I don't know if you guys.
There is. Well, myself and Ellen did a deep dive into this and looked at every project and gave it a complexity score, because we wanted to understand what we were lacking in capacity in the type of project. So a boiler project is typically something, you know, a PM1 would do. MSBA projects are a little more difficult, whether they're an ARP or core, because there's a lot of process involved with MSBA in the grant program. And that could go from any level of project manager. Something like City Hall Plaza would be a senior project level manager.
And can you speak to me on the tool shed just before my time?
Sure. The tool shed, yes, that's in the capital plan. That's actually in the plan for not a study, but a design renovate. So we will work with Parks and Landmarks to develop the actual scope and.
But it does or doesn't have a project manager assigned as of right now?
It does not have one assigned right now.
So that's just telegraphing. It's a priority for me for someone to get assigned to the project, because it feels like we've made no forward motion in the last 12 months on it, which I just didn't sort of realize at the time was something that could happen. So you're getting my slightly more sophomore counselor sophistication here, saying, yeah, we would really like that. And then just, I'll ask a question, but I can come back on my second round on the West End Branch Library. I'd love to talk a little bit. I mean, you know, really excited. We did obviously the programming study for the library last year. Really excited about the prospect of putting housing above that. I know it's like a sort of first time thing, but would love to better understand kind of how we see the process for that unfolding over the coming year.
Okay. Do you want me to say that?
Yeah, I don't know where I am on time. So. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Braden?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. I follow on my colleagues' questions and my concerns. I have a list of capital projects in District 9, a nice spreadsheet that goes back to 2014. And, you know, you mentioned that projects enter a plan and then you go through the process of study, design and construction, and when they age out when construction is completed. Do we have any, you know, guideposts that are benchmarks that a project looks like it's going off track? Like, is there any remedial correction that can be taken? I'm just thinking, like, McKinney Playground, it was first a new project in 2016, and it is still 2016. I think this is the starting of seven years. The Brighton High School locker rooms, which I was very excited to hear about when I was newly elected in 2020, there's still no action. I'm not sure where that's at in design. It's been in design for 3 years, this is the third financial year that it's in design. And then Ringer Park, it's 5 years. It's just these long periods of time that we have projects that are in the capital plan for District 9 and nothing seems to be happening. And you know, our constituents are very excited when they see a project coming on as a new project, but then if nothing happens, they just wonder what's the problem. And I do appreciate the issues with project managers and that, but even some of the smaller projects, it just seems like, why does it take so long to get it done?
Do
you want me to start, Jen? Okay, so I can start. Brighton Locker Room is actually out to bid. We should be awarding the contractor that project hopefully this month. But that is out to, we started the design of that probably less than a year ago, and we just put it out to bid. The other two projects I'm not familiar with.
McKinney Park is...
That might be Parks project.
Yeah. Do they not count as capital projects?
No, they're just addressed at the council.
I will bring it up in the park. Now, the other big issue in Alston Brighton is that the Jackson Mann Community Centre and the Horace Mann and the Jackson Mann Elementary Schools, the building has been designated for closure and demolition. I think the Horace Mann's going to stay until next June next year, and the community centre, I'm assuming, will stay open until the same time, and then everything will close. The Jackson Mann Community Centre is the only one we have in Alston Brighton. It's the only BCYF community centre in a neighbourhood with 75,000 people, and we need to have an urgent approach to making a plan so that we have boots on the ground and have a plan in advanced stages by July of 2023, because we can't afford to not have a community centre. It serves 5 precincts as a voting place. It has adult education, after-school programs. It has it's a FEMA emergency centre for our neighbourhood. It's a cooling centre, a heating centre. It is a very critical piece of our infrastructure, and we really need to make sure that we have aggressively approached a plan to rebuild not only the community centre, and also the schools that are attached to it. But the schools are a whole different issue. But the community centre is a really critical piece that we need to really keep on the front burner, because it's the only one we have. Other neighbourhoods have 4 community centres, we have 1. And I really feel that I'm just putting down a marker and saying I'll be watching this very, very closely. Have you any, it says it's in study right now, that there's been 100 to be scheduled in 2022. 2022 is almost finished.
It's actually assigned, Councillor, that project is a study underway. It's actually combined with 2 other areas, Dorchester and Charlestown. We're doing the community processes independent, but we are doing an in-depth study of that. Not only are we doing it on the community centre itself for those neighbourhoods, but we're also doing a siting study, which will, based on the square footage of what an ideal community centre for and community input, that will determine what we can actually fit on the existing site, and whether that is going to be a 3-building solution for the current school, the Horace Mann, and the community centre, or whether that is going to be a 2-building solution with a community centre and a K through 6. Those things are all right now being actively worked on within my department.
So in terms of community engagement, like no one in the community has heard anything about the study?
We have not started. We started the community engagement process for Dorchester and Charlestown. The Alston Brighton one got added later in the year, and we will be working on that over the next, I would say, month or 2. We would be starting the community process for Alston Brighton.
Yeah. You can appreciate my sense of urgency, because it's the only one we have, and it's really, really important that we really replace it, because I don't honestly see replacing it on site is the way to go, because we don't have a lot of available publicly owned land left. So
Thank you, Councillor Braden.
thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Lujan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the administration for being here. I have a question that I think we should probably ask earlier regarding the operating budget. What percentage of the budget is debt service? Right, and it was about 5.3 last year.
I think it ended up being there, yeah.
Okay. And so that was just a question that I should have asked earlier. The second question I have is regarding the process of getting projects onto these, and you may have reviewed this, but what does it take to get, and like our input, right, here at the stage is limited, but I'm wondering what does it take to get projects onto this list? I ask because, as I stated earlier, when we were talking about equity, and I'd love to hear the equity vision behind the capital plan, is really about corrective action that we have to take for the policy wrongs that we've committed. For folks in neighborhoods that have been historically excluded from the decision-making table, like when it comes together to putting together capital plans. And I look at some neighborhoods and I see, there are some neighborhoods that have a lot of things in the burner, and then there are some that have very few. And so I'm wondering, like, how does that decision-making process happen? And what is the equity lens then on this capital plan if we continue to see that disproportionate attention? And then I just want to uplift the questions that my district councilors have. I support the urgency of the moment of getting that shed, of the work that we have to do in Alston, whatever we need to do to make sure we get more project managers so that, yeah, and then I'll stop there, and then I have another question, so.
Did you want to take that, Jack, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of how a project gets into the plan, we send out requests to departments. So a basic capital project is an asset that we're city-owned, and we've typically worked with city departments because they're the owners of those assets. And so what we ask them to do is to canvass what their assets are, facilities, and what their needs are, and we're taking them as area experts. So the Parks Department will identify a set of park improvements or playground improvements or something like that. Property management will identify a number of municipal buildings. Same thing with all our other departments, library department and everyone else. What we will then do is determine whether or not do these project proposals meet a minimum criteria in terms of, is this a city asset? Is it an asset that meets the statute, that we can fund under statutory purposes, state laws that say we can do these
Right.
things, these things, these things. So those initial gates are generally passed by most proposals that come into the plan. So then at that point, what our charge is really in the central budget office is really to sort of just understand what is the fire department asking for, what is the police department asking for, what is the parks department, what is the streets cabinet, and just trying to, through basic questions like, who, what, where, when, and how, is like, who's, why are we doing this project? What's the need? Who's will benefit from it? What, is it a neighborhood park that is a very localized impact? What types of investment have been done there in the past? And it's really our effort is to really try to understand, why is the department asking for this? A lot of departments, such as the Parks Department, have capital plans or like open space plans that they've looked at what their long-term needs are. And we are making an assumption that the requests that we're getting year to year reflect the next perceived set of needs. So once those all come in, we then also look at, is this project going to meet a legal mandate? Is it going to meet a health and safety need? Is it going to, is it in a qualified census tract area in terms of like basic equity that we've looked at other projects in? And at that end of the day, we will look at and rate a project and say, yeah, this makes sense to do. And then we know how much money we have available each year, and so we will try to honor as many of the department requests as we can. And for the most part, most projects that departments are requesting generally get funded in the plan or are included in the plan. In those projects, even years when we say we're not going to include a project in this year's plan, we're not necessarily saying no to that project. It may be, say premature for that department to say move forward on a project. An example might be school department is requesting like funding for around 2021 around 2022 of the ARP program. The MSBA hasn't invited the city into that program yet. So for us, it's a bit premature to put that project in the plan. If the MSBA invites the city into the program, we would come back to City Council and request funding for it. Other projects, the department may ask for a building, like we need to build a building. They'll say, okay, but we need to do a study to understand what is the program that you need, what's the populations that's going to be served. We don't know where this building is going to be. So before we make a full-throated commitment to the building, just solving this problem, we want to understand what is the problem we're solving, how are we going to propose solving it. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question in some way.
It answers some of my question, and so, I don't have the benefit of being a sophomore counselor. I'm a new counselor still learning the game. But it seems to me that there are some things that there's some dissonance, and there are some things that are lost in translation in terms of trickling up. Like, so when I look at some of the projects on this list, and I know sort of what I hear from constituents in different neighborhoods, there seems to be sort of a disconnect between what we're planning for and what folks are asking. Not saying it's a complete dissonance, right? Of course, a lot of these projects are responsive, but if you look at, some things that I hear in Mattapan and Hyde Park aren't really reflected in terms of the long-term vision. So it looks like the conversation that happens for the capital budget is between your office and the departments. I'm wondering then, if included in this community listening session, you also include and incorporate the capital budget into that process, so that it is more reflective of what everyday people want to see in their neighborhoods, and so that it is more reflective of being rooted in equity and in that corrective action. One last comment is about we are under bonding for a lot of projects, but you know how I feel about that. I think that we need to just be getting more cranes in the ground, and we have the financial capacity to do that. And we under bond, and that means projects that we don't see go through in a year, another project could have gone through, or 2 or 3 other projects. So I'll yield my time because, Madam Chair, sorry.
Did you yield your time?
I'm yielding now.
I know. Did you want to say something?
Just to follow up, but there's an additional part of the listening session. We did hear a fair amount of feedback about capital, particularly like dog parks and open space acquisition. But we consider it sort of like, as you said, like a good chunk of them do respond to neighborhood concerns. A lot of our feedback loop, but we call it like constructively redundant. So as an elected official, you might be advocating for it. We're also hearing from the ONS liaison. We're also hearing it from the local state rep. We're also hearing, so any of those, we don't discount any of the feedback loops that provide or help prioritize investments. They're all valuable, and they're all so maybe the city agency has the care, custody, and control of the asset.
Where is that documented?
Well, where is that documented? It's an ongoing dynamic conversation. I don't know that it's documented in a form or anything like that. But so.
Thank you, Jim.
Right. Okay.
We can come back. That question is going to come up again.
Sure. I mean, we can work towards other metrics associated with how to assess this. But at the end of the day, some of the department who has the care, custody, and control of the asset has a little bit of more insight into why something, and some of it is coordination, whether it be funding, maximizing external resources, engineering, because a lot of times we have the same impact. Why can't we get this straight? And I'm like, wow, the T's doing this, or it's a lot of coordination. So
it's a lot of coordination when it's not a priority. It should be a priority.
No, and we think it is.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Thank you. Councilor Murphy?
So as an at-large counselor, I do applaud my district counselors. I know they advocate strongly for their neighborhoods, and I get to kind of look back, take the bird's eye view, and I do appreciate this breakdown. It's great to see a few comments and then just one question. I was happy to see like the East Boston Senior Center. I know we need more senior centers, so I'm gonna always go on record to advocate for more standalone senior centers also. We know that the ones connected to schools can't start programming till the afternoon, and seniors need our support during the day also, but happy to see East Boston is getting one. When I drive by Garvey Park, I always do say I think it's a success story of the year, connected also to the DCR rink. You see so many kids in the playground, kids, you know, playing football, street hockey. Anyone who drives by, it's great to see it's being used. The dog parks there also, so hope to see more of those park show up across the city. Also, let's see, the other one was, the libraries, the ribbon cutting in Rosendale and Dorchester, so hoping to see more of those. I know the libraries have become, you know, not just places where kids go to take out books, they're really community centers in our neighborhood, so great to see that. And I do believe it will come up at the Parks Department and Property Management because they own the building, but kind of to go off what Councilor Louis-Jean mentioned, like how do you get projects onto this list? I do want to go also on record of always wanting to advocate for the animal shelter, which I know Property Management owns the building that Menino gave them decades ago and did a tour of it. So at any chance, or if I could get some insight after this meeting on how to really advocate to make sure we have a permanent animal shelter building somewhere in the city is something that I'd like to see. So happy to be here and listening to the great projects coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Worrell?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the panel. One of my questions on the Grove Hall BCYF, a lot of advocates were excited. There's a great need for BCYF inside of Grove Hall. You know, the community engagement started, and of course, you know, our neighbors, our residents want the best, and in that community engagement, it sounded like we had so many amenities that we outgrew the place that we identified for a Grove Hall Community Center. Is there any re-engagement on having a conversation with those advocates in Grove Hall to let them know, you know, or just to have a better understanding of what can fit on that plot of land that was identified? And can you also let me know where we're at in the...
So the study that you're referencing is the study for all of Dorchester. So we developed a CAC committee for advocates of each area of Dorchester because it's so vast. And we engaged the community and we had 4 community meetings so far, basically to develop the program. Once we develop the program, and then we do siting studies. So we looked at 5 sites throughout Dorchester, Grove Hall being one of them, and for an ideal, essentially an ideal community center would be between 45,000 and 65,000 square feet. The Grove Hall site is 43,000 square feet. But again, there are other sites in Dorchester identified as part of that study. And so when we complete this study, we will provide, I wouldn't say a recommendation, we're going to provide pros and cons for each site that we have identified. Some being we looked at different parklands for state and city owned. That takes, that adds another year to a project to do a land acquisition. So we look at that, we do a test fit to say, which basically is building blocks for what a program looks like. So if a community feels strongly about a pool and an auditorium or a maker space, we want all of that feedback. BCYF did a great job, Marta and her team, keeping this very active and interactive on their website, and we got more than we usually get for feedback from all across Dorchester. And so basically we'll be wrapping that site up in May, this May, and we will be making a recommendation for, not a recommendation, based on the 5 locations, we will we will say what's best for each, pros and cons, I guess is the best way to say it, because some areas that were identified, they're too dense, they're maybe too residential. There's not an area where you could put any greenery around that. And that was overall, a lot of the residents wanted some green space in addition to having the community center. So we will be finishing that up in May, and we will make provide a list to the mayor and the team. And there is money in this fiscal year to start a design in Dorchester, somewhere in Dorchester, based on the sites that have been identified. So there is money that we would be starting probably in September, a actual design and build of a Dorchester Community Center.
Thank you. And for streets and sidewalks, is there a schedule? And is that schedule, in terms of repairs, is that broken down by district? And if there is one, can one be provided?
That would be Public Works. They manage that, but I'm sure they have a schedule. We could follow up and send you the link, Counselor.
Awesome. And last question, District 4 has been in the bottom 3 in capital investments over the last 5 years. And District 4 is one of the districts that faces some of the most challenges in the city. What are we doing in this budget to make sure that we're getting the investments inside of District 4?
Yeah, excuse me. So I'm just looking at District 4. In this year, there are we're proposing 3 new projects in the plan. So the Geneva Cliffs Urban Wild project, there's an improvement there at Norwell Street Square. But there are also some existing projects that are in the plan, the Fields Corner Branch Library.
Yep, I guess my question is why the bottom 3 over the last 5 years?
I don't have a specific answer for you on that.
And is any corrective measures to kind of make sure that we're getting the investment inside of the districts?
We will take a look and we'll take a look at that level of investment in terms of we'll take a look and see what has been invested and what if there's other opportunities.
Thank you, and I would love to work with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if there's specific, we receive capital project requests from a variety of sources, so if there's avenues to get those requests to us to consider, that's good. If there are, if constituents are advocating for like a park improvement or stuff, and we don't generally directly hear from a constituent. We usually hear it indirectly from a department or an elected official or something.
Right.
So,
and I guess, I mean,
yeah.
I look at the numbers and just kind of see something's off.
Yeah, well, I would say, I guess for sort of honesty is the capital planning process is good or as bad as a human system is, right? And lots of systems in city government, state government, and everywhere else are imperfect, right? So we attempt to respond to the things that the project proposals that are put in front of us, and we react to those. So we don't react to projects that we don't see, right? So that's could be that's a problem, right? That I think the chair has highlighted, right? So if you don't get the request, it's hard to respond to something that you're not seeing. So we need to look at ways that, if that's what is happening, we need to find ways to correct that. And happy to work with you or any other city councilor to make sure that's not happening. But I did look at, we shared some of the information for the last few years with you. I do see a progression of increased investment since 2018, where there was like $25 million allocated to District 4. This year there's 56. So there has been a progressive growth year over year for the last 5 years in the district. And I guess I would also say, like in my opening remark, there are sections called various districts and council districts or neighborhoods where there are, say, fire station improvements at multiple locations, where if looking through that, you may find additional investments in District 4 that we haven't specifically highlighted as a thing for District 4. Or there are citywide investments like resurfacing and reconstruction sidewalks that we don't particularly call out to a particular district if it's just a general program. That information, I guess, I would suggest you reach out to Streets Cabinet, talk with Yasha, and try to get a better understanding of what is happening specifically in District 4, if that's your area. But happy to work with you on, understanding where are we short in your view in this plan.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you, Councilor Rowe. I have some questions, and they're going to sound kind of repetitive, but I'm going to try my best to break it down so that we get more specific answers. In terms of your actual selection project for selection process for the capital, so take me from step 1 to now. Does it begin with the department, or is it the mayor? Or is it council and mayor? Like, who's involved? A to Z, like, what happens?
It could be any number of different things, what projects are flagged. So, and we don't want to also discount a department, so that, like, Public Works has engineers who go out and do a survey all the time, and they pavement condition. So there might be an area of the city that no one's calling on it, but they know, for whatever reason, no one's calling or flagging it as an issue, but they know from their professional expertise that should be addressed. It's going to get worse if they don't.
So
address.
Surveys.
Yep. So that's one feedback loop. They schedule it out, but
Department chiefs.
Yep. They show up on 311. My street is terrible. Fix it, please. City. But oftentimes it's the same folks who put that call in also call their city councilor, say, can you please prioritize? Go straight into the mayor's
Lobbying.
office. Yeah. So those are all things. And the other part of the thing is called programs. That's the most flexible part of the capital programs, because it's not, it's not like a building where Kerry's going out and saying, I got to do a very specific set of plans for it. It's sort of units and rates on paving or sidewalk repairs. I'm underselling.
Squeaky wheels get oil?
You try to react to that, because we had a group of folks from the Kennedy School, a team of students, and they characterized that, and they referred to that. The name they came up with, the creative name, was lumberjack. People who are masters of the public system, who know who to call and when to call and the right time to call. And
Did we do a survey of those people?
Did we do a survey of them? No, I think what their assessment of it is that
we did.
Oh, you did?
Our office did.
Okay.
And it looks the same as your survey for community process.
Right.
Affluent communities have access. We had BU look at 311 responses, and apparently it's the same. So affluent communities, people with money and resources know how to navigate and access. And there are people that have resources in poor communities as well, but very limited, right? So I want to understand, you get recommendations, and then does the mayor say, I like that recommendation or I don't? How does it work?
I feel like, well, obviously there's been a change in administrations, but there's a deep desire to be very collaborative with all folks, and there are like even.
I agree, but does that happen though? Like, if I am a chief of a department,
yep,
and I have a list of parks that I'm giving you,
mm-hmm,
when does it get decided? Who decide? Like, all of these reasons.
Yep.
Does it meet certain criteria? How we fund it?
Right.
Is it equitable? Does it meet the needs? Is it an asset? All of those criterias.
Right.
And then we say, we think we should go for this. And then we look at District 4 and in parks in District 4, for example, or District 5 even that has Mattapan, there are only four parks being addressed. But then we go to, for example, District 8, and there are 7. And then supposedly there are 17 parks in District 7, but then I found that Geneva Cliffs was categorized as Roxbury. That's in Dorchester, it's not in Roxbury. I also found that Eggleston Square was part of in District 7, and that Eggleston Square is not in District 7. And then the BCYF design, that's listed under District 7, but it says Dorchester, but then today we heard that we don't know where it's gonna go. So if that design is under the category for capital projects in District 7, then it's, where is it gonna go? Is it District 7 or Dorchester? Because I only have a little bit of Dorchester, which is Grove Hall to the right, all the way to American Legion Highway. And if the location that my colleague, Councilor Worrell is talking about is on the left, which is his district, but the design is listed as Dorchester, you're talking about his district, not mine. So we just have to make sure we comb through and make sure we take all of these projects that says that's under District 7, and I speak for all of us, I think, and make sure that they're going in the right town, in the right districts, because it looks good, but it's not. It's not always accurate, and I like that there are so many positive and wonderful projects. But then to speak to Councilor Worrell's point, or even Councilor Louis-Jean's point about that communication, if there is no documentation, if I come to you and I say, this is my feedback, and administration and other people tell you that, and I didn't write it down, and we have no metrics, and we actually have no formula on how we're measuring this, but then the city, not you guys here in front of me, everyone is saying racism is a public health crisis. But this plan, and then let's entertain me for a little bit, bear with me. This plan is really good because it addresses climate injustice, supposedly. If that's the case, if more Black babies die of climate injustice in Mattapan, then why are we putting almost 5-10 times the amount of money in climate injustice all the way in Fenway, where we know Black babies die of climate injustice in Mattapan more, when we know we die 30 years sooner than Back Bay? So when we look at this budget, and we look at Mattapan, and we look at areas in Dorchester, and we look at Roxbury, even in Roxbury, let's break that down, for example. If we start talking about what was spent in the prior years, and then we look at the actual budget for this year, and then we look at future monies to be spent, it's actually not what it looks like. We can break those numbers down in those departments if you like, but it's actually not what it looks like. It looks like we're gonna get a little bit less money. All of District 7 will get a little bit less money than the Josiah Quincy School alone. All of District 7 will get a little bit less money than the Josiah Quincy School alone. That looks kind of promising because it looks like it's more. There are a lot of projects that were in the play for years. But if I know, for example, if I have 7 kids or 9 kids, 9 district, if I have 9 kids and I know one of them, well, one of them is not so bright. One of them, he can't read that well. Wouldn't I make sure that I get him hooked on phonics? Wouldn't I say, I know that baby, I gotta go with him. I gotta help him. I gotta give him more tutoring. I gotta look out for him. It's my job to make sure that baby's okay too. Wouldn't I then go to the baby and say, hey baby, what do you need in order for you to be okay so you don't die? And so it's the city's responsibility, and that's the capital. We have so much work to do on this capital in this budget
because that's what it's looking like. We're fighting climate injustice in Fenway and Back Bay, but people die more of climate injustice in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan. You can respond to any of that if you like.
No, I agree that not every sort of, you need to target the investment to try to resolve the issue. And if there's, and I believe, I mean, that's part of the whole sort of context within the American Rescue Plan, the metrics associated with it, qualified census tracts, disproportionately impacted. That's the whole construct of the resource allocation, and you have to sort of demonstrate that. And that's the sort of came out of the pandemic to say that certain populations were more disadvantaged or adversely impacted than others. So they will have higher level of investment needs to occur there. And that's precise. I think exactly what you said about education is a recurring theme that we hear from BPS on a regular basis, that you have to address the need of the child to make it all equitable. So there may be certain students that the resources required to get that student to the same level is 4 times as much. I mean, there are out-of-district placements that are even significant.
So if Mattapan needs it 4 times as much, and we have a responsibility to look out for Mattapan, then why is Mattapan getting $43 million? Why is it, because if the departments, if I want to see how many parks and open space and beautifications and preservations were recommended for Mattapan. If I keep talking to you and asking you these questions about equity, and you're telling me the process, you said the departments come and they recommend it. Well, never mind what you approved. Where is the list of what you didn't approve? Sure. We would like to see that. We would like to see all parks, all schools, everything capital that was suggested, but it was not approved. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, in terms of what my councilor colleague Bach was saying, if we're not putting project managers and all that stuff, but how we fund things as well, that's how we're not getting to them. So for example, in the actual city spending, you'll see like how much percentage of the city's money is going into each capital project and how much of grant. So if you fully fund Fenway with city's money, that's gonna get done right away. That's gonna get done. The money's there. We know we got the money. It's our money. We can rely on it. But if you only fund 50% of something in Roxbury and you're relying on other funds to come in, other grants, we're probably gonna be waiting, right? That's not necessarily a guarantee. And I think, and I broke that down, and I can distribute that to everybody. And we're wondering then, how does that decision get made? That's the question that I want to know too.
Well, if the Boston Arts Academy is a good example, where like 40% of that is externally funded.
Right.
And so.
But how do you decide what part of the city gets what kind of money?
It's availability of the grant resources, you know.
Yes, you just mean in terms of like, how do we assign grant funds to a particular project versus, is that the question?
Yes.
So the grants usually will follow the type of project it is. So for instance, the city applied for a grant from MSBA for the Boston Arts Academy. We were invited into the program. The grant is tied to that project, so the grant flows there, right? So, and then the city makes up the difference for whatever the total project cost is from the grant. Lots of projects don't qualify for grants, so
let me give you an example.
Sure.
So in District 7, whatever was funded in Fenway and Kenmore will be 100% covered by the city funds.
What are the projects that in Fenway, Kenmore?
Well, no, we're not talking specifics in projects. If you like to, that's a different spreadsheet. But in terms of percentage-wise, I aggregated the data in terms of what was city funded and what was funded by grants, or both. And I'm saying to you, in District 7, in Fenway, things are being funded 100% by the city money. And in Roxbury, things are only funded 45% by city money. I would like to know, how do we make that determination? And you can come back to me if you like.
Yeah, I'm not sure really how to respond to the question, because the grants are really project-based, right? So if we're talking about Fenway, say the Muddy River project, it's an $89 million project. It's been in the plan for 20 years. It's largely funded with federal funds from Army Corps of Engineers. There's about $10 million in city funds to support that for the various phases that it's going through. So
I understand.
Right. So
I understand, but we can make those same choices for other places, right? We can say, well, let's not wait for grants to fund stuff in Roxbury or in Mattapan. Let's fund it 100%. Do you see where I'm going with this?
well, I guess I think I'm trying to get on the same page as you, as a project gets a grant when there's an opportunity to get a grant for that project, right?
Right.
So if there's no grant opportunity, then the project doesn't get a grant. So
Yeah,
for
but what if
instance-
there's no grant opportunity, right?
So then,
And then we go find something. Let's go find something in places that people are hurting. And let's 100% fund it by the city. That's what I'm saying. How do we determine that?
if a project, if the city chooses to do a project that's not, like, say, eligible for any type of grant, and the city chooses to do the project, we would fund it with 100% city funds.
That's right.
Yes.
Can't we do that for the other side of town? It's not happening in the other side of town. Because the things are not coming to your table, you're said.
So give me I don't know.
I gave you an example that Mattapan doesn't have money. Things are not being funded. If their projects are not coming to your table, they're not coming in front of you, you're saying, and then Jim said, hey, it matters how people can navigate, have this power and resource to navigate resources, to be able to advocate, to be able to be in front of us with departments or chiefs or, electeds. That matters.
Right. So
But don't, us as a city, we have a responsibility to go look at the baby that is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That needs more. And I'm saying to you that we together have to do a better job at going and look. We can't blame the victim is what I'm telling you. We can't look at who needs it and say, they weren't in front of us. We can't, that's not okay. Our job, I think, together, me too, I'm guilty of this because I should do my job to learn more, to understand. If I had known that this was happening, right, I should do my job. I should go learn about what's happening, what's missing. It's my job. I'm telling you it's my job. And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying we can't do this again. Or we have to change this, right? And you're saying, yeah, we're willing to change it. And that's the beauty of this conversation. Thank you very much. We'll go to public testimony if there are any signed up. If there aren't, then we'll go to second rounds. Sorry, I'm getting a list. Thank you so much. We have first. Yeah, I'd rather it in written, please. Oh. Okay, so just write it on the paper. Okay. Thanks, Cora. Okay. Derek Evans, please. And I'm sorry, I'm so sorry I've taken up so much time. With my time, we'll do a second round for sure. I won't talk anymore.
Yes, thank you.
You have 2 minutes, Derek.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Again, my name is Derek Evans, and again, but in the context of fiscal responsibility and budgets and outcomes, fiscal and equity outcomes, which I'm hearing are a double bottom line for this city. I want to mention again Malcolm X Park in Roxbury, which is District 7, and where I live within 50 feet. I have a home and other properties within 50 feet of this park. I think the city of Boston right now is in a situation where, particularly in my area of the city, After decades of egregious municipal neglect in District 7 and including Malcolm X Park, historical neglect, it's well known. It's nationally and internationally known, as well as in this city. There's finally been recently, as far as the park and the Parks Department, this much welcomed increased investment, capital improvement project. However, if it doesn't yield equitable outcomes or fiscal responsibility, that investment is very much unwelcome. Not just for me, who's a multi-property tax-paying citizen, but also for those who are not and who live in the city and not just in the neighborhood. You talk about citywide impacts, which also go in hand with citywide harms, right? The Malcolm X Park Improvement Project somehow creeped during a 2+ year process of myself and others being engaged in it. First, fiscally, from something that was about $2 to $2.5 million to something that's now $8.8 million. That $8.8 million, despite its size and its welcome as a number, right, of fiscal investment, capital investment, has somehow, and despite the community's participation, has somehow morphed into this octopus of a capital investment project that has harmful outcomes that we did not participate in, okay, ask for, and do not want, okay?
That'll be your time. Thank you. We'll do a second round. You can
Okay,
go back.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, Johanna Hines?
Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair, for asking such important questions and raising really meaningful points.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to listen and to be a part of the experience. And I have to say, as a resident of Charlestown, I'm definitely jealous of those living in other districts. It would be nice to have some representation here today, or anytime in the last month or so. And it's really hard, because there are big things happening in Charlestown, and we need a voice to be speaking for us. So I have a question. 10% goes to parks, which is really small when you consider it. A third goes to concrete and asphalt for impermeable surfaces like streets, which obviously need work. But from that 10% that goes to parks, is any of the fake plastic grass surface, the new ramps and paths, is that stuff coming out of the parks budget, or is it coming out of the street budget? I was also told today by the head of the Parks Department Design and Construction Unit, director of the capital plan, that I should call 311 after writing, and she's busy, to her several times with videos showing the piles of black pellets that kids in Charlestown are tossing in each other's faces like it's sand at the beach. This stuff is really toxic. It hasn't been vacuumed up in 10 years. And yeah, it's a public health hazard. Dogs are licking it off their paws. Kids are getting it in the chocolate frosting on their donuts when they sit in the sidelines. There should be signs when you walk in that discloses the full warning of what this stuff is. So that's a capital improvement that's been earmarked for Charleston for quite a long time. Not sure why it hasn't been done. I just want to say one last thing. When we talk about why certain grant money is going to neighborhoods, you nailed it on all of that. But in my opinion, it's because certain places have been designated historic landmarks and others haven't. And the BLC has been around for almost 50 years. Where have they been? Charlestown is the oldest neighborhood in Boston. I'm just talking about Charlestown because that's where I'm from. It's not a historic neighborhood according to Boston. That's crazy. And furthermore, the line to get into the BLC right now is around the corner. So if you have a property like the Harriet Tubman House and you want to protect it, or Malcolm X Park, or an Olmsted Park in Charlestown called the Ryan Playground, which I have the original plans for, you're out of luck. You're not getting city trust fund money like the Back Bay parks are. $1,400,000 for the Boston Common. I have one question. How much money has the Malcolm X Park received in the last 10 years from city trust funds? And how much money has the Boston Public Garden, which includes the Commonwealth Mall, much like the Greenway that could be in Roxbury, named after a black activist, Monet Cass. I mean, it's just, the playing field is so broken. You can't get the money unless you're a landmark. And you can't get a landmark unless you wait in line for 10 years. Where's the BLC been? And like you said, people in, I mean, where I live is not an environmental justice area in the neighborhood of Charlestown, but I know a lot of people that live in the housing in Charlestown, and they are getting, well, I don't want to use the word, I mean, 400 trees coming down from Charlestown, planned to come down this year, 400 trees. We have a 12% total canopy coverage, and 347 of those trees are in the environmental justice section of our neighborhood. And the bricks that need to come down so that the housing can be restored are going to be sold at a very high price. This is a brick hustle, and it's happening all over the city. The bricks that are being demolished in Boston are worth a lot of money. Where are they going? Why are we replacing good bricks and steel with crap? Thanks.
Thank you. Will Justice?
All right, so peace.
Peace.
So I'm gonna put it in layman's terms. I'm from Roxbury. Roxbury has been being very gentrified. We know what it is. We know that the money goes to the people who already have it, and to neighborhoods that don't look like ours. And when they do spend the money in our neighborhood, it is not for us. And we're seeing the uglification, we call it uglification of Roxbury, where they're building these new buildings that are, I don't even think they're LED certified, but it's kind of funny that they just look horrible. And it's obviously not for us. And it's like, how do we get into these meetings talking about a community process? There is no community process, especially for budgeting. So it's like, we don't know where the money is going, how it's being spent, none of that stuff. And we have to find out, how do we get into that conversation? And most likely, we should be the ones that are the head of this conversation, because I see in other places, people get to dictate what happens in their neighborhood, whereas in Roxbury, we're dictated to. They're telling us what they're going to do. They're not considering our voices. They're letting us know that when we speak, they don't care. Yeah, it literally is happening just like that. And it's like, it's a big disrespect. So I'm like, how do we get into that same room when we're doing this budgeting to actually do the budgeting for the people? I mean, because last time I checked, that's what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be for the people, right? So why are you building for other people and neglecting the people that lived here already? And I want to know, I mean, there is this money here. Like, we're looking at this budget, we're seeing millions. There are people that are underhoused, and you're building parks in other places that don't even need them. So it's like, when are we gonna start putting the money where it needs to go to actually help the people of the neighborhood? Because that's exactly what needs to be happening. And then it's like the environmental effect is always kicking our behind. Like, we have a whole bunch of people with asthma. I'm like one of the few people that I know that doesn't have asthma. You know, it's like, and you're saying like, oh, we're gonna just take these trees and forget that grass. We're gonna put something that's gonna toxify the land in the water. We already sitting on top of a brown field. How are we not spending money in order to fix these brown fields in order to help the health of the neighborhood improve? Meanwhile, you're bringing other people into this neighborhood who don't even care about the neighborhood. I mean.
Thank you. Sarah Freeman, virtual. She's still with us?
Yes, hi, I'm here, thank you. Sorry I can't be there in person. I'm here to comment on Malcolm X Park and to support the neighbors, my colleagues and friends. And they don't probably know this, but back in the late 90s, I used to coach running at the Roxbury Y, and we would bring the kids sometimes to run around there. So I feel very attached to what's going on there. I have 4 comments. One is the historic landmark status that was just referred to earlier. I know that an application has gone in. This park goes back to 1867, and it deserves to have that historic landmark status. Second, on the trees, I know the city probably hates to hear this, but please rethink how you're cutting down trees. We're getting mixed messages. We're hearing about the importance of trees, especially mature trees. They play a large role in air quality, addressing the climate crisis, flood resilience. The city's developing an urban forest plan and a tree protection ordinance. Mayor Wu spoke eloquently a few days ago at a forum called Trees as a Public Good. Yet dozens of trees are still proposed for removal in this park in an environmental justice, high asthma neighborhood. I know that the team worked on getting that number down, and I would say if they keep working, maybe they can get it down even further. And every tree matters, and these neighbors and park visitors really value them. I just looked it up online and found the American Society of Landscape Architects has this park on their website, and some of the headings in the description are the natural setting.
Thank you, Ms.
Just
Freeman.
follow it. Uh-oh, is that it? Okay, I'll sign up for another round later, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Ms. Liz Visa. I'm sorry, I think you were first and I skipped you. Forgive me. Welcome.
I have some copies of this for counselors that I can give you later. My name is Liz Visa, and I'm president of the Friends of the Public Garden. I also represent, not today, but I represent Boston Park Advocates. It's really important that as at Park Advocates, we know that the entire city of Boston and all of its green space need advocacy, and we don't want to divide and conquer. It's really important that they all get voices and strong voices. But today I'm here on behalf of the public garden and a building in the public garden, the Tool House. It was built in 1875 as the Women's and Children's Comfort Station. It was used by thousands of women and children over the 19th century. And in the mid-20th century, it was repurposed and renovated to be the maintenance facility for the crew. The good news is that as a result of the leadership of Parks Commissioner Ryan Woods and Councilor Kenzie Bach, we got money into the FY22 budget to restore this building. It is falling down. It is dilapidated. The maintenance crew shares this space with rats and squirrels. It is not to code. It is in terrible, terrible shape, and because it's a wood structure, every year it gets worse. So I'm here to plead with you to advocate that the PFD, Public Facilities, assign a project manager and use the money that's sitting there to be used. It is, we are very grateful and thankful that that money was allocated, but it's been sitting, and every year this building just becomes worse and worse. It's a historic gem. It's our public garden, America's first public botanical garden, and it really deserves better. So I really urge you to urge PFD to take action. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice and short, sweet. Can I just ask, and I don't know, either Jim or the team, if you, because I sent an email and I'm just trying to get a date as to when do you think we can get the list of the projects that were proposed but denied?
Well, you know, I think we talked earlier that there isn't really, projects are part of a discussion with the department, so it's never usually, it's a city asset eventually.
It's ongoing?
Yeah, it's ongoing, so it's not.
So, but there's a list. Did you approve everything that was proposed?
Well, in some semblance of it, yes, yeah.
There is no
there
pending.
are duplicates, there are things like that.
There is no pending. There is no list. There is nothing that was not addressed at all. Everything is on this proposal, in this proposal. There is no park or or anything that I can go look for in Mattapan or Dorchester or Roxbury or in poor neighborhoods that were like, no, not this year. Nothing.
What do you say, Jack? Please.
There are proposals that came in that we ended up not recommending at this time.
Thank you. Can I get a list, please?
We will work on it.
Can I get the list?
Yeah, it's not easy, because some of these things are back and forth discussions and things like that, but we'll
But how do they submit the requests?
Well, we'll take them in sort of iterative forms, but I mean, it's
Verbally?
spreadsheet.
Do I just, hey, Jim, what
You-
up?
well, no,
Can I
actually,
get that?
Counselor, from a counselor verbally, I think we did have check-ins with folks for priorities at the beginning, but I think we take them sort of, anyway, so, yeah, absolutely. If you have a request that you'd like us to focus on, we'd definitely entertain that.
You get verbal and written requests? Can I get that list?
Of verbal or written requests, we'll work on it, Counselor. That's all I can commit to do is we have a spirit of collaboration with you, and we'll work in that direction. But if there are any particular projects that you want to advance in any district of the city, we'll be happy to entertain that.
I'm new, and I'm a little slow sometimes. I'm trying to understand. Bear with me. You're saying you'll work with me on letting me know whether or not you can give me the list?
I just don't know that it exists in any format right now. That's what I'm.
But you told me you get requests in writing from the departments.
Yep, we do.
All right, okay.
We do.
Okay, so you can't confirm nor deny? You plead the fifth?
Well,
Okay.
what I can say is that we can work to.
All right, we'll work on it, Jim. We'll work on it. We'll work on it, and you're gonna help me. That means that you are gonna help us find all of these beautiful places in poor neighborhoods that we can do better.
I think we have a huge opportunity in that regard, so.
Okay, I'll take that. I like that.
No, because there are a lot of sort of
Councilor
programmatic
Lujan,
things.
we good with that? We'll take that.
Right.
There's
No,
an
it's-
opportunity here that we can shift things around.
Yeah, I think particularly with programmatic stuff, it's fairly flexible in some regards, paving,
Oh, good.
and sidewalk repairs, but,
And parks.
you know, it's just
Beautiful stained glass
implication-
and architecture preservation and stuff in
it's all-
poor neighborhoods.
It's all part of the mix, yep.
Oh, good.
Yep.
There's opportunity, thank you.
Yep.
I'll go to the second round. I appreciate that. Jim, I mean it.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilor Bach?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carrie, can I come back to you on the West End Library?
So on the West End and Chinatown branch, we're working with BBDA, Boston Public Library, and there's an RFP that went out for, actually Chinatown's, I think, more advanced in terms of timing, but there is one going out, if it hasn't already. Our department's not managing that process because it's a different statute that guides that. Once we decide, in the Mayor's Office of Housing too, once a developer is established, so it's an actual great opportunity. It's the city's first PPP, which is a private partnership. So we're excited about this, and we're working with the library and the other departments. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. And once that is, there's a lot of work that goes into this when they do with BBDA. And because we cannot spend city funds on anything that is not city-owned. However, there are means to, whether it's set up as a condo or, I'm not sure of all the legal nuances for it, but where we would develop, once the core and shell is built of the library, we would then take ownership of that piece, and we would be able to use capital funds in fitting that space out. And library is working. We have a consultant, one of our consultants on board to make sure that the libraries in the city's interest is covered, and that's for both the Chinatown branch and the West End branch.
Great. And the BCYF Tobin Community Center Accessibility Project, can you talk about that a little bit and timeline? I'm really excited about that. Folks may not know the Boston Breakers, which are our wheelchair soccer team for the city, plays in the gym in the Tobin, but the only way to get up to it is through this one chair at a time lift that's pretty onerous. And just in general, of course, it's a huge BCYF center, and the lack of accessibility has been a challenge. So I'd love to hear what the timeline is on that.
So that project, we actually currently have a retaining wall project that we're doing for BCYF at the Tobin. And I'm wondering if we could incorporate it into that to try to expedite it and take it out as one project. But we could look at that, Counselor. One is a different, because one's exterior work, which falls under a different statute to do work, which is actually can happen quicker. Whereas the accessibility, if it involves any interior building work, then but we will look at that. We have someone that's assigned to that project that probably could do this too, in conjunction with that.
Okay, yeah, any way at all to expedite that for those folks would just be amazing. And then the city archives, can you tell me a little bit about where that is? I have this general sense that they've been like a little bit shafted in our sort of facilities planning processes over time. I think the facility that they're in, once upon a time, we envisioned being like a larger campus for them, and then we've left some of it with a utility. We're now giving like the whole second floor of it to EMS training, and I'm a little bit concerned that nobody's kind of looking out for the actual archival activity needs they have out there. So can you talk to me about that?
Sure. I believe we have a study in this year's budget. We are doing the current EMS project that we're doing out at Rivermore there with the archives is that's actually out to bid right now. We're in the process of doing pre-qualifications. But the actual archives, I believe that is a study for this year that we would look at.
Okay, well, just if I can register that that's something I'd really like to follow up on, because like I said, I feel like somehow, and it's not to say I think, EMS training is important, but I know that part of the whole point of getting that facility out there when we did was to try to help bring some of the stuff that was kind of in abandoned basement space in BPL into the archives custody, have sufficient space for processing and proper storage. I think the project you have is one to allow them to have rolling shelves so they can store things more effectively, which would hugely increase the storage space because they're at capacity. That's great, it really needs to happen, but there's like considerable other things connected to having a real professional archive, which we have out there in terms of the staffing, but which we don't necessarily have in all the capacities. And I'm just a little bit afraid that we are collectively giving away to other uses the space that we would need to do that well. So I'd also like to understand the utility contract that we have out there and at what point we might consider giving that up.
Thank you. Councilor Bach, Ed is not here. Councilor Braden?
Welcome. How do we get this thing to work? Good. We've talked a lot about the process of identifying projects that we'll get into a timeline, into a list. And do you have any written protocols, policies, or procedures that guide this process? So that's a standard practice that you'd follow to help standardize how projects get onto the list across the city?
We have a guideline that we share with departments where we identify, explain to them what a capital asset is, how to make a request, and we give them forms to complete and fill out so that we can have a common understanding of what it is. And we have internal OBM guidance that we share with our staff to here's how to approach on how to think about capital requests.
And then also, such projects like in District 9, that we have the Commonwealth Ave phases of upgrading Commonwealth Ave.
Yeah.
With the Muddy River project. Do projects that are eligible for a lot of federal funding, obviously do they get, they have their own momentum? Is there ways to sort of balance that with the needs of maybe further flung parts of the districts that are maybe less prestigious or less, that can attract less federal money?
I think so. I mean, those particular projects you're talking about, like the Commonwealth Avenue projects, those are very long-term efforts to have them come to fruition. There's multiple steps that need to happen for them to happen in terms of being formally accepted or reviewed by like the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and then being put on the Transportation Improvement Plan so that they become eligible for future federal funding. That process can take multiple years. I've been here with the city for quite a while, and I've seen projects take 15, 20 years to work through those federal and state and regional processes. So I guess if a project, if there's a major project, say, I would use maybe Cummins Highway as an example, where the Streets Cabinet has proposed making improvement on Cummins Highway from, I think it's like Harvard Street down to the square. And that project is not going to be federally funded. It's not going to have state funding. We've allocated $24 million to that project. Streets Cabinet is working through the design. So when they finish the design, finish the community process, and are ready to bid the thing, there's nothing preventing that from happening. And we, in terms of budget support, are quite happy to have that move on as quickly as possible. So there are projects that around the city that aren't going to have grant funding or federal or state funding, that don't have to wait for that kind of stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Lujan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two comments and a question. So the first is, Mayor Walsh is first. He was the first to appoint a chief equity officer. And the reason why I hark on this point is because we all throw around the word equity, and I'm almost tired of saying the word. Because it's really important. She defined equity as a corrective action that we need to take. And so that's why I'm harking on this point, is that if we are really rooting ourselves in equity, it really does have to be about that. When we look at the list of projects in the capital plan, we don't get to anything that has to do with a neighborhood that is, has been historically excluded or that's not at the table until like Project 31, and I think that's East Boston, and I think that's a police station. When it comes to the size of the amount of money in the capital plan devoted to a neighborhood, right? And that's the police department. So query whether that is what we would consider deep community investment that is based in equity, right? Then around 33, 34, we get to like Roxbury, Mattapan, Dorchester. So that's what the root of these questions are for a lot of us. And, I think Madam Chair, we're trying to, pull out an analogy. If there's a street and there are 4 houses, right? And the first 3 houses, there's no fire. The 4th house, there's a fire on the fire. There's a fire happening at the house. Your hose goes to that house first. And I think that is a lot of what we're trying to pull out here and tease out. Second question is, we'll comment is on capital plan and our ability to bond on public land for more housing. I'd like to see that as part of the capital plan. There's a lot of, we as you were here when we had the bond hearing, and we talked about ways that we can be creative in addressing the affordable housing crisis, us not living up to our, not even meeting our debt capacity. I love seeing the investments that we're making in public housing when it comes to Mildred Haley preservation and, improvements that need to happen. But we also need to be thinking about, like, how are we building and how can we use the tools at our disposal to do that building, and I think that can also be part of this capital planning. And then third, I heard a really great comment that I'd like to learn more about in terms of timing and what it takes for us to to do land acquisitions? You said it takes, I think you stated that it takes a year for a project to actually do the land acquisition. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that process.
Sure, it depends. You know, when we had to, when we were doing Engine 17, we did a friendly taking. You know, we worked with the church to take the property in front of Engine 17. That took about a year. If it's, we also work.
What was that process, like, can you walk us through what that process was like to like actually acquire the land?
Sure, we went through a real estate person, and then, you know, they basically, we approached them as saying, you know, we'd like to look at this. We got fair market value, and then it's really a negotiation, and then once it's determined and settled, it has to go in front of, I believe it has to go in front of City Council to accept, or Public Facilities Commission. Yeah, it definitely goes to PFC to accept that.
And this is the city itself acquiring. This is not the BPDA. This is the city acquiring the property. So that we could
build in front of the existing firehouse. Which in the long run ends up saving us money, because if not, we have to find a swing space within the district, because there's response times that the firefighters and, you know, that they're required to achieve or make and maintain. So, yeah, and so then that was a friendly taken. If there was a, you know, a land acquisition in terms of, if we wanted to, say we wanted to do a swap with the state for a parkland, you know, we might, they might be interested in something of our property. So there's a lot of legal nuances to it that, obviously I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to speak to that, but we do, it's pretty much always amicable.
And how large is the property that you were describing in front of the fire station?
I think it's probably 50,000 square feet at least. It's a ledge right in front of the existing.
And it was privately owned prior?
It was privately owned by the church.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lujan. Councilor Murphy?
I don't have any follow-up questions, but I do appreciate Councilor Bach's comment. I visited the archives and then went back a month later to visit the archaeological department, which is now in the same space. And both times we were talking about, obviously, the need for the EMS facility, but knowing that there'll be a gym, locker rooms, and showers on the second floor above the archives. So just wondering if we can revisit that and see if there's a better place either to put the archives in the archaeological department somewhere else, or somehow, it does worry me if we're putting plumbing and showers above our archived. That's my only comment, but thank you for this hearing. It was very informative.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. So I think it's helpful for the people listening, and obviously for the constituents that are in the audience to understand why we're going back and forth. And then when I've mentioned before that, you know, the capital budget, and we, in terms of what neighborhoods are getting, the difference between Mattapan and Fenway per se. And I think that Fenway deserves every bit of that money. But when I talked about where the money was coming from, and then you just talked a lot about in terms of if it's a grant, if it's federally funded, we wait, right? Because there's no guarantee of that pot of money actually being ready to go. And so I think that's the point I was trying to make, is that when we're deciding what percentage of city money goes into certain neighborhoods, it makes a big difference, right? Because then if we know that only, what did I say earlier? If we know that only a certain percentage, let's see, 37% for Roxbury, of the city money is going into Roxbury, then we know that 63% it has to wait, or it's kind of not a guarantee, right? Or we don't know how long it's going to take. It's unpredictable. And so that makes a huge impact because Roxbury just has to wait longer. Mattapan has to wait longer. And so when we look at all of the neighborhoods and what percentage of the city money is going where, and if 100% of Fenway in District 7 is being funded by city money, they have to wait less because that money is there. I think that's the point that I was making, and it felt abstract, and it wasn't.
I guess I'm having difficulty just understanding when.
I'm not asking a question.
Oh, I know. I'm just trying. I was commenting on your remark.
Yeah.
If I may.
Please.
The fact of grants. I guess I don't fully follow you when you say. There's 37% in Roxbury and the 63% has to wait, so Roxbury waits. I would be interested in seeing that, just understanding the list of projects you're looking at to understand that. That's all.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because it depends. You're like, well, it depends of the project and what they qualify for. I understand, but a choice is being made as to whether or not we 100% fund through city funds. That's still a fact. And I'm saying that we can do the same for other areas as well. And so when I look in my district, speaking of just my district, and I know that Fenway is being 100% funded by city funds in the capital budget, but Roxbury is being funded 45%. I know that the rest of it has to wait. I know that it's unpredictable. The timeline is unpredictable. Am I still not?
I don't think that Fenway is being 100% city funded.
I'm not following that 100% Fenway is. I'm not understanding that number.
We looked at what was coming from the city funds. You guys have this data that you give us.
Right. So I guess what
in District 7, not all of Fenway, in the portion that District 7 covers.
Of Fenway?
Yeah. Fenway is across 3 districts.
I appreciate that.
I see where we are.
I'm not at.
We're not looking at the same
thinking in
thing.
terms of that micro section of, say, District 7 that happens to be in Fenway. So I'm not appreciating that.
Yeah. But do you see how it matters for a district councilor looking at her district and saying, so for my district, Roxbury has to wait, but Fenway doesn't? Do you see, maybe that's a conversation that we need to have moving in the future, how we look at how we fund things.
Right. Yes.
Okay, and I'm so sorry that felt, I don't know, I needed to explain more, I guess. But I think it's worth us looking at that data in different ways. Not just, for example, if I give you neighborhoods and I say, oh, Jamaica Plain is getting 73 million, or not getting, but proposed. Hyde Park is getting 5 million. And I go, and I keep going. I go, Financial District is getting 8 million. Fenway Kenmore is getting 237 million plus. And then I go, East Boston is getting 100 million. Dorchester is getting 133 million. If I keep going like that, it doesn't make sense, because then you'll say, well, there's some schools being built, right? And so, but if I keep going, that sounds really hard to hear. And what I'm saying is, it's worth looking at, okay, but are we funding it with city money? Are we funding it with federal, or where the grants come? Because then we're talking about, everyone's asking about how long does it take? Well, one of the problem is how you're funding it. And if you're funding Roxbury more than 50% with federal stuff or grants, then we know we have to wait longer. We always have. It's not a new thing. And so it's important for us to really look at those data so that we can say, hey, Roxbury deserves to not wait for once, or Mattapan deserves not to wait for once.
Madam Chair, may I address that?
Absolutely.
So in terms of because Fenway right now, because the BAA, which is a citywide school, anyone throughout the city can go to the Boston Arts Academy. That's about a $140 million investment. It's a fantastic school, and we're very excited to open that up. For another, in Roxbury, the Dearborn, and that's an MSBA project. In Roxbury, the Dearborn STEM School, which is another gorgeous building, that was also an MSBA, so the investment was made there through
How much was
with
that?
grant funding. That was probably, this was 5 years ago, so it was probably obviously less because of I think the square footage, but it's of the same quality as the BAA. It's gorgeous. Also at the Roxbury Library, that actually, we got grant funding from the library, I forget the name, Mass Library Association. So when we did that project, that was another $20 million investment. When we did the Bolin building, again in Roxbury, there was no grant funding for that, but the library, the school, did have grant funding associated with both of those projects, and multiple awards that we received for those buildings. We also invest heavily in Madison Park. We're doing multiple projects in there right now. One is an electrical upgrade for the building. We're also doing a locker room renovation for both Madison and the O'Brien. We're also starting a new study for to look at let's look at a vocational school that meets the city's needs throughout the city.
Yeah.
So we're doing a deep dive study of Madison Park. So I think because the price tag on the Boston Arts Academy, I think it's skewing the numbers, because if you take away 144 plus the money for the Muddy River,
if you take away
the 144
the
million.
87 million plus the 144, you still gave Fenway more money than you gave Mattapan.
Okay, I'm
The
sorry,
remainder.
I don't see the district allocations.
So it's okay, because Jim said we can move things around. Jim said it's flexible, so I'm happy.
Well, obviously, there's 12 other members that you have to convince that.
Jim said, no,
Yes.
kidding. And to my council colleagues, please press your button at any point if you have questions. Go ahead. Councilor Lujan?
Just one question that I didn't get to ask. It's just curious, process-wise, why is the capital budget done at the same time as the operating? I know there are a lot of cities that, because of these questions, these issues that come up, separate the process. So I'm very much always interested in process and the decisions behind why we do things a certain way. And so why is it that we choose to do it at the same time when we could probably benefit from sort of a mirror experience, or from learning from one to inform the other?
Yeah, I mean, besides just the integration of the debt service as part of the operating budget, there's typically different staff involved, like at the department, from the operations side and the capital side. So I think that there may be some statutory requirements that needs to be done in the wintertime, but I don't know that it's not the same statutory language like by the second Wednesday in April or something like that. But there was this sort of view that people are in a budget mode, but also assessing the operational impacts of do you have to staff this new location, like the reopening of City Hall Plaza is now, we have a more activated space, but it is going to require additional staff to open the north entrance and maintain the site.
One informing the other could still happen on a slightly different schedule, where, it would also allow, to the extent, that we're able to have an impact on, what we've heard, and hearing them at different stages, or what we aren't able to get into capital, or what we are able to get into I think that, I think there's some tension, as you can see, in asking the questions of, well, why isn't this neighborhood getting this? And I think that if we have different listening sessions off cycle,
sure.
It could also help to bring more voices to the table. Because I think, you know, and this has been mentioned before, you know, the listening sessions, this cycle pilot, and I hope that, especially when we are trying to bring in people across class who can't hop on a Zoom or don't have the time, the resources to, you know, to show up at meetings, that we are being creative about how we're doing the outreach, and we're cramming all this one type of outreach at one time that really disadvantages folks who are probably used to being disadvantaged. And you know, we should always be thinking creatively about how do we undo systems of harm, or how do we undo systems that tend to advantage groups that are used to the game. I forget what what those kids at the crazy kids at the Kennedy School were talking about.
Right.
But how do we undo that?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So that's part of the iterative process to like, what's the best way to reach everybody, and people who aren't, you know, not necessarily amplify all voices, sort of our thematic, you know, discussions. How do we make sure that every voice is heard, and we attend to all the needs that need to be addressed.
Yeah, I just think it requires us to think differently, and to
no, I agree.
And to not always, you know, be so beholden to what we've done and what we've relied on.
Right, exactly.
Which is, you know, I won't go back to bonds, but thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Do we have any, is it about the capital budget?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Very much.
You can,
Very much.
you can have the floor, Derek.
Thank you. You know, $1 or 10 million of them is only as good as what you get for it. And this is a very good and productive conversation. I'm glad to see the councilors pressing the city administration on the more equitable allocation of dollars from various sources. I also have to say, be careful what you pray for, okay? If you don't also demand an equitable implementation of those capital investment dollars. The fact of the matter is, and I'm going to repeat it because it has everything in the world to do, since we're further along on the allocation and expense end in a park in the city in Roxbury at Malcolm X Park. And in this case, this project is so wasteful and hypocritical of city goals and irresponsible in terms of both budget and equity, the two bottom lines. It is a case study in what the rest of the city and underserved communities may end up facing if you get your wish today, which is more capital investment in these underserved communities. What does that look like after the check is written, okay? A couple specific examples. It could happen and come to a park near you soon. The city is paying good money to remove the city's wrong trees from this park. They're wasting good city money from whatever sources on unnecessary regrading of a hill. Also, on the unnecessary outdoor classroom, when there is one 200 feet away at the Higginson Lewis School of the same size, design, and type, funded under this Mayor Menino's Schoolyards Initiative. City says it's for the benefit of the school. School says we got one. Okay, it'll add impervious surfaces and cost trees on the most historic and enjoyed by many part of the park. The unnecessary $2 million move from natural sod to toxic turf, which will have to be removed eventually, is a bad implementation of equitably allocated $8.8 million to this particular park in Roxbury. Okay? This is also important. When you ask for and pay for 2 years of community participation, okay, and then it hit the roadblock that we hit a month ago, which cost us extra city staff time to manage an impasse that the city caused, and walking back promises during that, and ignoring resident solutions, all of this, and the construction delays, whatever it's costing on a daily basis in the contract between the city and the contractor, is not fiscally responsible. And it is not the best equitable or otherwise allocation of these resources. Final point. The corrective to all of this, the council has a job to do on making sure that the allocations are equitable. The city needs to empower residents and citizens and listen to them when they know not only the history, the culture, the uses, their own ADA neighbors and how they make it through the park or don't, but also what constitute budgetary and equity shortfalls. We know this stuff. This is not the time me testifying here today is way past the time for the city, be it the administration, the council, or others, staff, to be considering these things. Be careful what you pray for, because inequitable outcomes will happen if you just throw money at these communities that sorely deserve it, and then walk away and let the contractor and city staff do whatever the hell they want to do to justify the allocation. Again, this started as a $2.5 million project. It morphed into an $8.8 million with tremendous hypocritical, wasteful, harmful, publicly environmental unjust outcomes. Tell somebody, I don't know who it is, maybe I'm not in the right place. Perhaps it's our mayor. But somebody needs to know that this is an accurate, demonstrable, metric-backed fact. Thank you.
So I guess I'm interested in, where do we go from here, right? How we can work together. And I'm sorry, we had a sign-in system, and you signed already, and you wanted to speak again? Okay. We'll take final testimony, and since this is the second round, and then we'll move on from that.
Thank you very much. This has to do with a point that was made by someone, I'm sorry, the woman in the nice pink jacket. I don't want to just call you by your jacket, but you made a comment about capital funding or capital money cannot be used on city land. Did you say that? Or non-city land? Okay, so I have a question as it relates, this is a serious question because I don't know the answer and I really want to know. In 2019, Mayor Walsh gave a $30 million bond to the BHA for the redevelopment of the public housing. A $30 million bond was given to Boston Housing Authority, which I understand may not be the city, but all of the public courtyard space that those buildings sit on does belong to the city. And they have hired a developer to build on top of that space. That's a problem. It's not Mayor Walsh's problem, it's Mayor Wu's problem. I mean, that's a big deal. And I just figured it out sitting here. Thank you. The other thing I want to ask about the turf fields that are being, applied to Olmsted Parks is like, what would Olmsted do? Really, like he designed these parks with the health and the well-being of the people that live in cities at the heart and mind of it. I mean, what's changed? We still need that stuff as much as we did in the 1800s. We need it more now. Finally, and this is really directed at the, because the mayor has such great ideas about being climate resilient, being a leader in the green, movement. This turf stuff, there's not a single place in the United States of America where you can recycle it. It's made of toxic materials, PFAS, the stuff that you can never get rid of, plastics that are, the worst sort of plastics. Where are they gonna go in 10 years when they need to be replaced? There's nowhere in this country where they can go. You know where they're gonna go? To a poor country across the ocean where they have to burn it because there's nowhere for them to put it either. So we're pushing this bad choice onto countries that deserve better. I mean, that's the truth. Read about it. Where does it go when we're done with it?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ms. Sarah Freeman.
Hello again. I was going, ironically, was going to also mention the turf. It's still being researched, some of the different alternatives, but the decision is not clear that these are healthy, and they are a challenge to dispose of. Each one is tons, and no one's willing to take them. And if there's a foundation that's willing to upgrade city fields, maybe the city can request that they not be artificial turf. Like, I think it's good intentions that maybe are going awry. Fourth, this is an opportunity for young people, back to Malcolm X Park, for young people in the neighborhood to learn about their history. These are treasures between Olmsted and Malcolm X. They could learn, really get engaged in a constructive way. So thank you for thinking about all these things and doing the hard work of trying to find good solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman. Thank you. So I wanted to give you one more example. And I hate beating the dead horse, but listen, seriously, there's capital, actual, budgeted, and then there's actual spending, right? And so when you look at the prior years of what was budgeted, for example, for D7, it was 106 million. And by the way, just so you know, this is, I got all of this from what you sent me. I didn't, and so what was actually spent, but then when you go to what was actually spent in prior year, then you will see that, let's see, capital spent prior to year 0. Yeah, so 2 million. So from 106 million that was budgeted, and then 2 million was spent. And then and that's the big difference, right? That if monies are available from the city, then projects can move forward. And so it's not as abstract, even if I'm only talking about portions, and I'm not going to name, because love my Fenway people and Fenway itself. However, it is what it is. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm talking about a portion of Fenway or what project. What matters is what gets prioritized by city funds and by other funds. And then we know that one happens faster than the other, so how is that decision made? And then if you're saying that it's a list of things, there are criterias and you have forms, and then you send that over and people fill them out, and then you decide. But then I asked you, is it a decision with your team and the mayor and council and departments? You said it's all of the above. And then finally we got to a point where it's like, okay, well, we're just not addressing equity. We're just not doing a good job addressing climate injustice in poor Black neighborhoods, in this proposal, at least, right? And then I looked at previous years, and we have all of these comparisons on all levels. Percentage of money spent from the city, oh no, we give it to that community, not this community. On all levels, in the past few decades, how we spent money, but then how are we proposing to do it this year? Not that different. So we have a lot to look at, and you're saying that it's flexible, it's all flexible, and Jim, then you said, don't blame me, it's a whole bunch of people.
No,
Jim, I'm joking. You didn't say that. You said it's a whole team. So, but I'm looking forward for all of us, and we're gonna be talking, and I'm gonna be sending it back to the counselors. And I really encourage that, IGR sends us the information so that we're prepared for the future hearings. If the counselors don't have any other questions, I think that we're good. I think we can close here. I look forward to the working sessions, and then I look forward to our meeting and letting you know what we come up with.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much. Meeting adjourned.